Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
You can tell a lot about a company by where it invests. At ConocoPhillips, we're investing in Arctic science and engineering at the University of Alaska Anchorage. And we're supporting today's students and tomorrow's engineers at UAF. In fact, today, more than 100 of our employees are University of Alaska graduates. And our future is in their hands. We happen to think that's a pretty good investment. ConocoPhillips, Alaska's oil and gas company.
The National Weather Service.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for another live edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy. On the looking at the January summary, you can see this was in the top 5, actually the 4th warmest right here, 29.4 degrees. That was the average temperature for the month there, out of nearly every day above normal for the temperature except for one day, and 8 above 40 degrees. We had 6 record temperatures. This is for Anchorage, not statewide, just for Anchorage right there. And here's the comparison ones. Still 1977 at freezing, the warmest month of January ever recorded in Anchorage. And moving on to yesterday's satellite imagery, a couple of dying fronts were in over the interior, one right through here, another one moving mostly into the southwest interior, but that moisture sliding up across the Seward Peninsula. Nothing more than light snow or flurries here with both of those features. And then a little bit more well-defined, stronger frontal boundary out here, but all that being directed up to the north and mostly holding the cold air back to the west there as well. Some of that did slip into the shimmy area today, giving some snow and gusty northwest winds. Otherwise, for today, you can see the upper level low still spinning down here with moisture coming up from the south and southeast, bringing some rain to Kodiak Island. Light rain, only 0.05 of an inch being reported at the state airport there in the last 24 hours. So pretty light rainfall amounts. A narrow band of moisture here bringing showers from the North Gulf Coast in toward the Kenai Peninsula, and some of those slipping into the southern areas of the peninsula this afternoon. Maybe some light stuff there across the inlet on the upslope mountains areas, but generally some lost clouds here over the interior, left over from those 2 frontal boundaries that dissipated over the area late yesterday and overnight. And some of that light snow and flurry conditions in over the interior, getting caught up in some northeast winds of 15 to 30 miles per hour here coming down the river valleys, and that bringing some impulses of clouds and light snow or snow, mostly light snow and flurries, all the way down to the coastline out of the interior up here. We had some flurries going on at Galena, Indian Mountain. Fairbanks had a little bit this morning, as well as Nenana. May have enhanced a little bit as it got up against the Alaska Range there toward Healy, but nothing too significant. Some fog, again, northern Cook Inlet areas at times dissipating this afternoon. Pretty light winds up over the northern interior with high pressure inland, and that brought a few flurries and kind of hit and miss fog conditions along the Arctic coast, but not a bad day up there. Pretty nice light winds, except out here at Cape Lisburne, where they had gusts to 55 miles per hour during the afternoon hours, right on the edge of this gradient that's significantly more over in Russia, but just close enough to catch them with those strong southwest winds. Point Hope had no report at all, but winds were quite light and variable as you get down toward Kivalina and all through the west here, and then picking up from the northeast again as high as 30 miles an hour through the mid and lower Yukon and Kuskokwim River Valley areas in the deltas. Some scattered snow showers drifting southwestward here on the north side of this upper level trough through this area, and that brought some scattered snow showers into the west there, or into the west, actually heavier snow behind this frontal boundary there near the Shimia area. And again, that's going to stay out to the west. The southeast coast, again, gale force wind gusts, Lynn Canal on down into Stevens Passage. Lighter, more variable winds on down to the south there. Not a bad day, but enough breeze there to keep it clear over the southeast coast. And there are some areas of clearing also over interior Alaska. For tonight, still some remaining areas of clouds and flurries, mostly over the central interior. Some of this will begin to mostly slip down to the south there, and then we're watching more moisture advance northward. So look for rain and snow to continue along Kodiak Island tonight. Light on the light side, some flurries maybe over the southern Kenai Peninsula, right along the Alaska Peninsula, on over to Unalaska, but amounts quite light through the night tonight. Some isolated scattered snow showers over the southeast Bering, some of which may slide down into the Adak-Atka area. But generally, mostly clear here over the northern Bering Sea and the west coast, all the way up into the Chukchi Sea. And you can see that wind condition will drop off dramatically, if it hasn't already, here on the western capes of the Arctic coast up there, as that whole thing slips up to the north. And looking at strong high pressure over the Yukon, keeping much of the interior in its domain of influence there. So that'll keep most of this moisture down to the south. Any of this will be crossing, any thread of moisture will be south of Kenai, more likely Seldovia, Homer, maybe Seward, just a risk of some light snow tonight, and that'll keep to the south. Bristol Bay looking a little more vulnerable to seeing some precipitation, not as much as we'll be seeing on the east side here, but still some better chances than areas up to the north. No change over the southeast coast from what you saw today there, clear and breezy in areas. Other areas will be we'll see less wind, and still have the stationary frontal boundary out here, keeping the snow in over the western Aleutians. And for tomorrow, Monday, again, we still have this front trying to push its way northward, and bulk of that moisture now at the upper level low, either trying to slip up into southern Cook Inlet and the Kenai Peninsula for a chance of some moisture tomorrow and tomorrow afternoon. Wet for Kodiak Island, periods of rain, fog, IFR conditions, especially on the southern and eastern sides of the island, right up to Fognak. And all along the Alaska Peninsula coast, look for periods of rain and gale force winds with this. Could see gusts of 50 miles an hour here, taking a turn to the southwest. And of course, cooler conditions, more of a mixed rain or snow condition out west of this frontal boundary here, west of Falls Pass into Unalaska and Nikolsky, scattering out to a few showers over Adak and Atka to high pressure conditions out towards Shimia. High pressure, 1,050 millibar center there, sitting up over the Yukon. That's going to keep those outflow winds going from the north and northeast across the northern panhandle. Again, about like today, you'll probably see some gale force winds through the mid portion of Lynn Canal, again down into Stevens Passage, Five Finger Lighthouse. Probably see the gusts much similar to what you saw today. Maybe a little bit more of a breeze down over the southern areas, but probably nothing you're going to notice at all. Look for some areas of low clouds, fog, and flurries, much like today there, especially on the east side of the Arctic coast. Better conditions on the west side with more offshore flow. And otherwise, nothing going on, just a mostly sunny day with continued chilly temperatures. Coldest here over in the eastern interior, climbing above zero at some point in the afternoon tomorrow afternoon. Of course, mildest down here to the southwest. We're getting clipped by this southeast wind flow for milder conditions back down along the Alaska Peninsula. And then taking a look at Tuesday's forecast, a lot of H's here on the map from western Canada all the way up to 1,041 millibar center right over the central interior. So what's going to happen is the moisture here down to the south that begins to pull westward tonight and tomorrow. That'll work up the coastline on the west side of this high in the southerly flow there, and kind of between the two centers a weakness, so that's going to scoot that moisture right up across the Kenai or the Seward Peninsula into Kotzebue Sound, Selawik Valley maybe with some moisture possibly up to Red Dog Mine or Noatak. Kivalina, a little bit better chance, but this will all be flurries or light snow, maybe a little bit more continuous, but any accumulations with this will be quite minor. Rain all day long for Kodiak. Tuesday, mostly east winds 15 to 30 miles an hour. So gale force winds will be back to the west here. Southeast rain, possibly heavy at times along the Alaska Peninsula. especially on the Pacific side there. A lot of moisture back in toward the eastern Aleutians there in Alaska, Nikolsky, Dutch Harbor, all looking wet with in the form of rain now that the warmer air is rotating westward there, pushing the colder air back to the west as well. Chance of snow up to the Pribilof Islands with some gusty northeast winds, 20 to 25 miles an hour, 20 to 30 miles an hour. High pressure holding out here over the western Aleutians and sending that next storm right up into Russia once again. Temperatures this afternoon range from the lower 30s to near 40, with Sitka, one of the warmer locations down there, at 40 degrees, but a couple of 39s here at Port Alexander and Klawock, both at 39 degrees. 34 there at Wrangell and Juneau, with a 34 also at Yakutat. These are all 4 p.m. readings. Cordova 33, 31 in Seward, 36 Homer, 19 Kenai, 20 in Anchorage, 12 up at Talkeetna, 39 Kodiak with some light rain, and same thing down at Akiak, 5 below in the Copper River Basin there at Glen Allen, and 8 at Northway, but up to 19 both at Fairbanks and Delta Junction, 15 at Nenana, -4 at Fort Yukon, farther to the north, a little cooler, Arctic Village with a -9, 9 above at Barrow, otherwise the remainder of the Arctic coast in the teens, except for those strong southwest winds push Cape Lisburne up to 31 degrees, 9 at Shishmaref, and there's a 1 at Selawik, 19 over at Buckland, and a 17 down at Nome, 18 Tin City, up to 30 there at Savunga, 23 that's St. Michael, and Monik, 23 degrees, 27 at Macoriac, same thing at Bethel, 27 degrees with some passing periods of light snow. Mostly in the 20s though, mid to upper 20s over all of the southwest interior. The Pribilofs, lower 30s, mid to upper 30s over the Aleutians, with a 36 there at Cold Bay and a 34 at Sand Point, 32 degrees with snow out at Chimia. And for the lows tonight, below 0 here over the eastern interior to near 0 through the central interior, and then on the plus side of 0 to the west, and mildest down here over the Bristol Bay areas out into the Bering Sea, 20s, 30s over the Aleutians, lower 30s, and then temperatures ranging from 15 to 30 degrees all across the southeast coast. And for the highs tomorrow, upper 20s to lower to mid 30s for the Panhandle, and then coldest up here over the eastern interior, mildest again above freezing into the 30s over the Bristol Bay zone to near 40 along the Alaska Peninsula. It looks like that's where the warmest temperatures will be tomorrow, and that'll include Kodiak Island. For flying weather, IFR here, again the east side of Kodiak Island, all the way down around Sitkinak, and then especially the Pacific side of the peninsula, although a portion of this will spill up into the southeast Bering Sea, with marginal VFR working up the coastline tomorrow to about this position, say midday and into the afternoon, and that will just continue to spread northward tomorrow night, and on Tuesday, probably all the way up to the northwest coast there, and then some areas of IFR along the eastern Arctic coast, and not bad really considering out here over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. So looking at the passes, Anatuvik, VFR in either approach, wide open for Adigan as well. Lake Clark, look for some possible marginal VFR showing up on that eastern entrance, maybe tomorrow afternoon, probably holding off till later if it happens at all. May not happen at all. Otherwise, Merrill, good VFR in either approach. Rainy, wide open for windy and rainy. Isabel, same forecast. No obstructions to visibility, or no ceilings or obstructions to visibility for any of these passes coming up, except Portage. May possibly some moisture could sneak up and get into in toward Whittier tomorrow afternoon down Passage Canal, but that's just a slight chance at this point. And Chilkoot and White, another VFR day. Freezing levels mostly south of the area, although beginning to make a jog to the north here, up toward Kodiak Island. Otherwise, the surface right along the Aleutians, these are tomorrow morning's freezing levels, and the surface here hugging the coastline, a little bit off the southeast coast there, and then down along the Queen Charlotte's. Icing threats, areas of below 10,000 feet of the light to isolated moderate rime, maybe mixed variety. I think it'd be mostly rime icing. Southern Cook Inlet back down across Kodiak. Could be some moderate stuff here along the Alaska Peninsula and over to the Unalaska area. And upper level wind flow chart, again, a huge area of high pressure here from the western Pacific all the way up into the Arctic there. Of course, that directing one branch of the jet up and over and then down from the north, a little farther to the west than it was doing last week at this time. And kind of a south to north flow here, bringing again the moisture and milder temperatures back into Kodiak, the Alaska Peninsula, Bristol Bay, and those areas, and it kind of takes off to the northwest a little bit. And for the 9,000 foot winds, east-northeasterlies at 30 knots come across the Gulf of Alaska, southeast, pretty strong, 55 to 60 knots here, coming up into Kodiak Island, the Alaska Peninsula, 40 knot northeast or southeasterlies there over in northeast Bristol Bay, and a pretty good wind max here right through the north central interior. Then they take a turn to the north at 40 over the eastern Aleutians. Much the same pattern here, got that narrow area of brisk easterlies at 3,000 feet right through the interior. Lighter winds to the south, lighter winds to the north, and then they pick up once again associated with this storm down to the south. And looking at turbulence, moderate chop advancing northward across Kodiak in time over the next 24 hours and back across the eastern Aleutians all the way to, say, Atka Island. No turbulence here through the interior, and then with that band easterly winds, look for occasional moderate chop, mostly below the 5,000 foot level there, especially in the vicinity of rough terrain, and then some areas of mechanical turbulence here along all of the southeast coast in areas at times tomorrow, especially the roughest areas will be up here over the north, probably less of that down to the south. And after the break, I'll return with the boating forecasts.
To help us understand what causes a sonic boom and if there's anything we can do to lessen its impact, I spoke with Dr. Kevin Shepard at NASA Langley Research Center to find out how it works.
Any vehicle traveling faster than the speed of sound creates a sonic boom. What actually happens is shock waves, which are pressure rises, are developed near the airplane, and as those travel to the ground, what we perceive as a noise, in fact, is this sudden pressure jump, much like a rifle crack or a balloon popping. In fact, what you hear are two booms, closely separated in time, boom, boom, and you could visualize it as two rifle cracks or as two claps of thunder,
Sure.
closely spaced in time.
What is the speed of sound? And well, how do you measure the speed of sound?
We like to say Mach 1
Okay.
is supersonic, everyone knows that expression. Mach 2 is twice the speed of sound, Mach 3, 3 times, and so forth. The actual speed depends on the atmospheric conditions. So if you're near the surface where it's typically quite warm, speed of sound is 700, 750 miles an hour. When you're at altitude where airplanes fly, it's a little lower, maybe 600 miles an hour. So for example, Concorde traveled at Mach 2, 1,200 miles an hour is roughly the speed it traveled at.
A common misconception about the sound barrier is once it has been broken, there is just one quick noise, and then the noise dissipates. One reason this misconception is so prevalent is that most people hear a sonic boom when they're standing in a stationary position on the ground. What actually happens is when the aircraft breaks the sound barrier, it continues to break it as long as it's flying supersonically.
Any observer on the ground, hears the airplane go by. If you picture a boat in the middle of a creek and the bow wave from the boat, you watch the boat go by, and a little while later, that bow wave passes you on the riverbank. People further down the riverbank have the exact same experience. So what's happening is, in the case of the airplane, it's dragging this boom carpet behind it all the way across the country.
Depending on weather and altitude, the sonic boom created by the aircraft can be heard in a path of about 60 miles wide for the entire distance of the flight. So, if an aircraft is flying from New York to Los Angeles, the sonic boom will be heard consistently across the country in a 60-mile wide path. This is the foremost reason supersonic flights are not allowed to fly over land in the United States.
Yeah, most people find the sonic boom unacceptable. These are two loud sounds. They're startling, they're annoying, they tend to shake buildings, rattle windows, and so based on experience with Concorde, for example, it just doesn't happen. There is no commercial overland supersonic flight.
But revolutionary steps now being taken by NASA may change that in the future. So Dr. Shepard, are we stuck with the fact that we'll never be able to fly over land at supersonic speed?
We're hopeful that's not the case. The current programs we're working on are aimed at allowing supersonic overland flight. The hope we have is based on a recent flight test which demonstrated that we can in fact shape the airplane in such a way that we can shape the sonic boom and it sound different, sound more acceptable. This has been known in theory for 40 plus years, but it was only demonstrated within the last couple of years with a real flight vehicle. Now that's part of the story. The real issue is, can we get the boom low enough for people to find it acceptable? We think we can reduce it. Can we reduce it enough? we're hopeful, and we're hoping we'll have a flight demonstrator within the next few years.
So, Dr. Shepard, how do you test sonic booms? I mean, is it always in flight, or can you also test it on land?
We'd love to do it in flight,
Okay.
but building vehicles, as you can imagine, is very expensive, and you don't get to do it very often. So if you've got a theory that this kind of vehicle will make a different kind of boom than this, yeah, we'd like to build the vehicles, but that's not going to happen. So in terms of figuring out what people might find acceptable, we simulate the sonic booms using ground-based simulators, which are basically loudspeaker systems, where we can produce the sounds that would be developed by certain vehicle types.
Sure.
And that's the simulators that we have here at Langley. They're being used for that, because we hope that will guide the design of the airplanes to ultimately lead to an acceptable sonic boom.
Can you give me some examples of what you test in these simulators?
These simulators are basically loudspeaker-based systems, so we can make sounds, and we can design them to make sounds that sound very much like real sonic booms. We bring in human test subjects, members of the public, and in essence they give us their opinion. You know, this sonic boom versus another, which actually corresponds to one airplane versus another, because we're trying to design airplanes to give us the right sonic boom. And so the characteristics of the boom is what they're assessing with their ears. If we can solve the sonic boom problem, then we can have supersonic flight over land. People and goods can get from place to place quicker, because our overall aim here is to make the air transportation system more efficient, safer, in this case faster, but also environmentally acceptable. That way we save time, we save money, we have a more efficient system.
That's it for this edition of NASA's Destination Tomorrow. I'm Kara O'Brien. For all of us here at NASA, we'll see you next time.
Welcome back. Not much change tomorrow over what was seen today here over the southeast coast. Gale force gusts or sustained winds, Lynn Canal on down in towards Stevens Passage, less wind, but I think tomorrow you may see a little bit more of a breeze than what you saw today. All these directions varying from north to east, mostly east here along the central and south coast, but staying light and a little brisker up the north as you go northward here, especially out of the bays. And then looks like kind of a east to northeast wind, 15 to 20 knots out along the coast at times for Tuesday. Still some higher gusts coming out of the bays, and northeasterlies starting out 15 to 20, and then no change up into the northern areas. And for the North Gulf Coast, easterlies 20 knots all the way down here into Kodiak Island, and then picking up to 25 knots, say when you get down to Chiniak and Marmot Bay in those areas, on down to Sitkinak. Northeast 20, Shelikof Strait. Those northeast winds will extend all the way up Cook Inlet, but begin to drop off once you get in toward the Forelands down to 15 knots, and then even less north of the Forelands. That same pattern holds through Tuesday here through Cook Inlet, all the way down to Shelikof Strait. And then the winds, looks like it'll be a little lighter, northeast 15 for Prince William Sound, easterlies 15, but still 20 knots here for the western Gulf Coast, Fognak Island, the Barrens, but small craft advisories definitely here for the southern part of Kodiak Island, as high as 30 knots. For the Bristol Bay area, northeast 25 knots. Still could see some gales. Probably we'll see some gales here on the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula. And then for Tuesday, we'll hang on to the gales here southwest of Kodiak Island in this marine zone, but dropping off to 20 knots to the peninsula, and small craft advisories for Bristol Bay. Small craft advisories also here for the eastern Aleutians, for the Fox Islands, mostly northeast winds, then turning north just west in Nikolsky, and down to 20 knots for the central areas, and even lighter out to the west. And then looks like the winds will swing around to the south here at 15 for the far western Aleutians. 30 to 35 knot winds here in a narrow band from the Adak-Atka area, and then dropping back to 20 knots from the northeast. For the Bering Sea, east-northeasterlies, 20 knots here over the southern areas, and the Pribilofs, lighter winds to the north. Tuesday, even lighter than that, light variable winds around St. Lawrence Island. Barely a breeze here in the northern areas, but 20 knots out of Kuskokwim Bay, northeast 20 for the Pribilofs. Up along the Arctic coast, light variable winds for the central and the eastern areas. Easterlies, 10 to 15 knots, so another light wind day. Well, it'll be a light wind day here for, say, Cape Lisburne and Point Hope, and it'll stay light for the other areas. And for the Tuesday outlook, south winds 10 to maybe back up to 25 knots on the western coast. Otherwise pretty light here, about 5 knots from south or southwesterly directions. For tonight, again, watching moisture increase or continue to gradually increase here ahead of this frontal system, which is still quite a ways to the south. Fair over the interior, just some spotty clouds, maybe some flurries. No change over the panhandle. Dry here all along the coast, and not bad on the Arctic coast. May see a little bit of an increase here on the low stuff on the east side, but staying fair through the interior. Wind and rain coming up, gales again along the Pacific side of the peninsula there. Rain for Kodiak Island. Some of this moisture may slip up into southern Cook Inlet, but won't be much, and then that'll slip up the west side of the coast on Tuesday for some light snow there, but staying dry and chilly over the interior. No change for the panhandle. Pretty wet conditions, gusty winds, Kodiak Island, all the way out to Nikolsky and Unalaska. Have a great evening. Good night.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Cook Inlet Tug and Barge is a marine transportation company specializing in harbor services with a primary marketing focus on the Port of Anchorage, providing their customers with quality-based service specifically tailored to their needs.